Long before the roads were tiled and before strangers brought news from distant towns, there was a village called Amaraku, cradled between thick forests and a river that sang day and night. The soil there was red and fertile, the palm trees tall and proud, and the people loud in both laughter and judgment. In that village, a girl was born during the harmattan season, when the wind was dry and the air thin. Her name was Ngozi. The elders said children born during harmattan carried unusual destinies. Some believed they were marked for greatness. Others believed they would struggle before they rose. No one knew which side of destiny Ngozi stood on. From infancy, she was different. While other babies grew round and heavy on their mothers' backs, Ngozi remained light, almost weightless. As she grew, her body did not fill out like other girls. Her wrists were narrow, her shoulders small, her waist barely formed. When she stood beside her age mates, she looked younger than she truly was. People talked. At first, they whispered gently, then they whispered boldly. Then they stopped whispering at all. They called her names disguised as jokes. They shook their heads and blamed her mother. Some said perhaps her mother had offended the gods before giving birth. Others suggested that an unseen spirit had followed the child from the womb. Her father carried the weight of those murmurs like a stone on his chest. He stopped mentioning her proudly as his firstborn. When visitors came, he presented her younger sister first, the one whose hips curved like the crescent moon and whose laughter attracted suitors like bees to honey. Ah, her sister. Adama was everything the village celebrated. Full cheeks, smooth skin, a figure that promised motherhood. Suitors began visiting even before she reached full womanhood. Gifts of yams and palm wine lined their father's hut. And beside her stood Ngozi, thin, quiet, watching. But while the village measured beauty by flesh, heaven had measured Ngozi differently. Her heart was large. She woke before sunrise to sweep the compound. She fetched water not only for her household, but for widows whose sons had left for distant cities. She sat with the elderly and listened to stories without growing restless. When quarrels broke out among children, it was Ngozi who settled them with wisdom beyond her years. Her voice was gentle but firm. Her thoughts were sharp. Her laughter, though rare, was pure. Yet, kindness does not silence cruelty. When she walked to the river carrying a clay pot, women would murmur that the pot looked heavier than her entire body. When she passed the marketplace, traders would glance at her and predict a lonely future. Even the children she helped sometimes laughed when others mocked her. Still, she endured. Only her mother stood like a shield. Her mother would remind her that destiny does not consult mockers before it unfolds. She would hold Ngozi's face and tell her that some seeds grow slowly but become the tallest trees. Years passed. Then came the season that changed everything. It was during the planting season when clouds gathered thick and heavy. A stranger arrived in Amaraku, a young farmer from a neighboring village called Umode. His name was Chike. Chike had left his homeland seeking richer soil and new beginnings. He was strong, broad-shouldered, and carried himself with quiet determination. But fate tested him before Amaraku could even test him. As he walked the narrow forest path toward the river, a wild animal leapt from the bush, fierce and hungry. The forest roared with struggle. It was Ngozi, who was on her way to fetch water from the river, that heard the disturbance. Without waiting for help,
Without thinking of her size or strength, she grabbed the thickest branch she could lift and ran toward danger. Her heart pounded, but she did not stop. She struck the ground hard and shouted with a courage that did not match her frame. The animal hesitated. Seeing two humans standing their ground, it retreated into the forest. When silence returned, something invisible had shifted. Chike saw her. Not the thinness, not the bones, not what the village saw. He saw bravery wrapped in a fragile body. He saw selflessness. He saw fire. Chike was so grateful to her. Ngozi noticed he was a stranger because she hadn't seen his face in the village before. Then Chike explained the reason why he had come to her village. They became familiar after this little introduction. Chike followed Ngozi to the river, waited for her till she finished. Gratitude turned into companionship. Companionship turned into understanding. Understanding quietly became affection. For the first time in her life, Ngozi was looked at not with pity, not with mockery, not with suspicion, but with admiration. The village noticed, and they began to talk again. This time, their whispers were louder. They warned Chike. They laughed at him. They said he had been deceived by kindness and blinded by foolishness. They predicted that he would regret tying his destiny to a girl who looks like the wind could carry her away. But Chike was not a man led by noise. 2 months later, Chike went to her father's compound and asked for her hand in marriage. The day the bride price was presented, the village gathered not in celebration but in disbelief. They waited. They waited for the marriage to crumble quickly as they had predicted. But destiny is not shaken by gossip. 2 months after the marriage, Ngozi conceived. At first, it was a rumor. Then it became visible. Her cheeks softened, her hips began to round, her arms filled out. By the 3rd month, she glowed like the first sunlight after heavy rain. The transformation was undeniable. The same mouths that once laughed fell silent. By the 7th month, Ngozi walked through the village with a grace that commanded attention. Her beauty was no longer quiet. It was radiant. Her once fragile frame now carried life confidently. The women who mocked her now visited her, pretending concern. They asked what herbs she used. They asked what secrets her husband knew. They searched for magic where there was none. There was no magic, but there was peace. There was love. There was freedom from constant humiliation. And when her time came, she gave birth to a son whose cry echoed across Amaraku like a declaration. Strong, healthy, vibrant. The elders shook their heads slowly. They began to say perhaps the gods had been testing the village, not Ngozi. Perhaps they had misjudged what heaven had carefully crafted. Years followed and blessings multiplied. Chike's farms prospered beyond expectation. Rain favored their crops. Their compound expanded. Laughter filled their home. Ngozi bore more children, each healthy and strong. Her sister, once admired above all, found that beauty alone did not secure peace. Suitors came and went. Some marriages faltered. Some promises failed. But Ngozi's home stood firm. In time, Amaraku changed the way they told her story. No longer was she remembered as the thin girl who looked breakable. She became a proverb. Mothers would point to her and warn their daughters never to mock what they did not understand. Elders would mention her when teaching that destiny often hides inside unlikely vessels. And on moonlit nights, when children gathered around the elders, their story was told not with laughter, but with reverence. They would say, "The wind once tried to shame a seed for being small, but when the rains came, that seed became the strongest tree in the forest." And so it was with Ngozi of Amaraku, the girl the village laughed at, who became the woman the village learned from.